Okay. So let's come back to our lecture series of Genesis 18 to 22. We're going to see the later years of Abraham. This is a kind of skeleton of the entire of these chapters 18 to 22. 18 verse 1. Now the Lord appeared to him by the roots of number, while he was sitting at the tent door in the heart of the day. In the heat of the day. So Abraham's three visitors can be seen here in 18, 1 to 8 and 19, 18, 9 to 15. And Abraham's intercession can be seen there. So Abraham's hospitality for strangers, and we see God's prophecy and blessings of Abraham and Sarah, and see to come through a miracle. That's happened here, 18, 1 to 15. And here, 16 to 23, we see Abraham's intercession. By knowing the truth from the three visitors, Abraham interceded on behalf of the people so that God will spare those people. We see God's prophecy and Abraham's prayer for Lot. And we see the judgment on Sodom and Lot sin to bring forth judgment. That's the outline we see here, 16 to 23. Now, verses 2 and 3, chapter 18. When he lifted the eyes and looked, behold, three men were standing opposite him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the earth and said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in your sight, please do not pass your servant by. Please let a little water be brought and wash your feet and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will bring a piece of bread that you may refresh yourselves. After that, you may go on, since you have visited your servant. And they said, so do as you have said. Here Abraham says, I will bring a piece of bread and you may refresh yourselves. After that, you may go on. Where to refresh? Here the word says, rest yourselves under the tree, very close to the nature. Of course, Abraham had a tent. By the way, Abraham was the richest man on earth during that time. It's not an ordinary tent. I imagine he might have had a wonderful, luxurious tent. The tent that can accommodate even the guests, the guest room and the bedroom, because he was a rich man by then. In the ancient cultural context, people spent most of their time with the nature. Here, Abraham also asked the guest. He doesn't know that God visited him. Later on, he realized. But, he invited them to take rest under the tree. Hospitality under the tree. That's what in our ashram we are doing. Yesterday, we had a great time. Our friends came. We had a wonderful food with an open environment. And we really gazed at the beauty of the sky. And some of these friends say, after a long time, we are able to see this brightness of the stars. The more we are close to the nature, the more we refresh ourselves. And of course, this context here, the text is an entirely different thing, but I'm talking about the refreshing spirit. Even now in this postmodern world, people are having so much load from every direction. They need refreshment. That happens when we become more close to the nature. So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, quickly, prepare 3 measures of fine flour, knead it and make bread bake. So now here the whole ministry of hospitality. We should learn from Abraham. There is a saying that help us to understand, to reach anyone is through the stomach. Stomach is the door to reach any individual. That's true. That's the reason in our ancient Asian cultural context, hospitality is given high priority. If somebody comes, a guest comes, they give a lot of priority. Of course, in a Hindu philosophy, there is a saying that says, Atidhi Devo Bhava. God comes in the form of a guest. No, that's what happened here. God visited Abraham in the form of the guest. Of course, this guest intentionally didn't come. He was passing through. But in the ancient context, people have this concept to serve people, to open their homes, their kitchen, their food for the people to come and eat. They felt it as a blessing. When somebody comes and eats, that's a blessing to the host. But today we have a different cultural context. Even when people come, they ask, do you like to have a cup of coffee? Do you want to have a cup of tea? In the Asian context, they don't ask. They serve. But of course, we got this Western cultural context. That the ministry of hospitality is very much diminishing in these days. But, ministry of hospitality. Here we learn from Abraham. And then in that context, we see God reveal what is going to happen in the future. Then they said to him, where is Sarah, your wife? He said, there in the tent. He said, I will surely return to you at this time next year. And behold, Sarah, your wife, will have a son. And Sarah was listening at the tent door, which was behind him. The whole concept here, hospitality, ministry of hospitality. This is one of the outstanding ways of the ministry of God. Ministering to God. We may not be able to go around and preach to 1,000 and huge congregations, but ministering to people through the hospitality results, brings a lot of results, and it contributes to the eternity. That's what happened here. Abraham voluntarily went and invited guests. As a result, he invited blessing into his home. He was lacking child. The guest blessed him, saying that by next year, you will have a child. I remember as a young boy, in a Hindu cultural context, when I started growing, our forefathers, grandparents, aunts and uncles, even parents, they had an amazing service to the guests. Always, welcoming guests. Particularly, I grew up in a very typical joint family system. Huge family members. In a small village called Salampalam near to Avanigata. All the time waiting for guests to come home. Even when guests come, particularly the religious guests, the religious gurus, when they come, people have this concept. They bring blessing to the family. This is actually biblical. This is actually came from the biblical point of view. Serving people is one of the great method God expects from every one of us. Abraham invited voluntarily the guest. The guest brought heavenly blessing on him. So here the text says, now Abraham and Sarah were all advanced in age. Sarah was past childbearing. Sarah laughed at herself, saying, after I have become old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord, being old also? Even the way of addressing here, we should learn the cultural context of Asia. In the long ago, even in the biblical context, we see wife addressing the husband. Here, my Lord. In Telugu, it is very, very appropriate word. My Swami. Today, addressing one another, we see a different context. So we should have that give and take, respect relationship. We see here in Abraham's family life. And the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah love, saying, shall I indeed bear a child when I am so old? Is anything too difficult for the Lord? This is an amazing question comes to us also. Is anything too difficult for the Lord? Nothing is difficult for the Lord. In Abraham's context, having children is a great problem for him. He was advanced in years. But God asked Abraham, is anything too difficult for the Lord? No, it is not. It is not. I was telling yesterday my memory to the friends who attended our opening ceremony at Ashram. A friend of mine, Chandrasekhar, he used to mock at me. You have just a few rupees in your hands. Is it possible for you to have an ashram? I was roaming around in those days, outskirts of Bangalore, to find out a place for ashram. And I believe this, God asked me this question, is anything too difficult for the Lord? And I said, no, it's not difficult for the Lord. And it's not difficult for me to establish an ashram. And today I can say, yes, there is nothing difficult for the Lord. God can do amazing things. At the point of time, I will return to you. At the appointed time, I will return to you. At this time, next year, Sarah will have a son. See, Abraham voluntarily, forcefully invited a guest and served him, gave him food, water to wash the feet, and a wonderful environment for the guest to sit and relax, refreshment, and brought the food, and he brought blessing to his house. That's even today it happens. In the Bible, we have seen ample of evidences. This old woman constructed a small room only for the guest, that to a prophet. Whenever the prophet passed through that place, he comes and stays in her house at the upper room. What happened? A blessing came into her home when her son died. Prophet brought him to life. Ample of stories we see. Lydia invited Paul to be with her. God blessed her. Today, this is very much disappearing in a Christian context. Pastor is not really respected in these days. In the earlier days, Ayagaru means, that was in another context. Ayagaru was, Pujarha, they used to worship him. It's not that, but having a respect to the God servant and inviting him to the house. I need to tell this. This is almost a year now as a pastor in my Secunderabad Bible Fellowship. I've been asking, I want to come and visit your home. I pick up the phone and say, brother, are you free? I want to come. One brother keep on asking him. He says all the time give some kind of excuse and say. And then one day I told him, please, brother, I want to visit you. If it is not comfortable at your home, I want to come nearby some small restaurant or a tea stall. We can sit there and talk. I want to meet physically, have some kind of fellowship. Even that he doesn't want. People don't want a God servant at home. That's the reason today we see there is no hunger for God. There is no blessing in the families. How do they get blessings? Even when Jesus knocks the door, they don't want anybody because the Western lifestyle of privacy is very much deeply sunk into the minds of the Christians, particularly Christians. Actually, hospitality is very much, biblical concept, and is the biblical concept that spread around the world everywhere. Hospitality, serving people. But we are filled with our Western mindset, privacy. Even frankly speaking, the other day, With a lot of difficulty, I took my two-wheeler, went all the way near to Kachibauli to visit our family, our church member, sitting. Informed well in advance. I went and then sat few minutes. Within few minutes, they were looking at the watch, indirectly saying, the way that they're saying, Pastor, you need to go very long. We are so surprised you came all the way from Kompally. It's very, very far. Keep on. 2-3 times they're telling, indirectly saying, it's our time is enough. You need to walk away from the home. I'm not telling the imaginary stories. I'm telling very recently, 2 weeks or 1 week ago, this happened. People don't have time for guests. Inviting. Here, you look at Abraham, voluntarily, even forcefully, he invited the guest. Do you think he doesn't have a work? He was the richest man and a lot of cattle and so many servants. I think he was the busiest man during the time because he had to, like an administrator, he had to do many things, 1001. But he gave priority for hospitality. There is a blessing in hospitality. That's the reason God blessed him. Sarah denied it, however, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And God said, no, but you did laugh. Of course, it's a kind of conversation. Genesis 14 and 18, if we look at, in Genesis 14, Chedorlaomer captured the city of Sodom. Here in 18, God is going to judge Sodom. God is going to judge Sodom. One that had escaped came and told Abraham of Lord's capture in chapter 14, here in 18. God comes and tells Abraham that he is going to judge Sodom. God himself comes and reveals. Abraham rescued Lot by force in Genesis 14. Here in 18, Abraham will rescue Lot through prayer. If Abraham, here, you see the importance of hospitality. Abraham forcefully invited, gave hospitality. As a result, he not only brought blessing to his own family, he was able to contribute to the God's kingdom. He was able to save Lot and his family. Even till today, we are talking about how Lot and his family have been saved. Only we know that story. But that all happened by the ministry of hospitality. We have so many Western useless mission strategies that are not at all relevant to our culture in the context. Our giant spiritual people in India, they have practiced this ministry of hospitality, not only in the home, even in the church, ministry of hospitality. Maybe keep on, I'm telling the story of Bhakt Singh. He understood the ministry of hospitality. Of course, he brought the idea from Sikh religious context. After the Gurudwara service, they give food. But he knows the value of hospitality. People coming from different villages, they come. And when service is over, they need a kind of hospitality, welcoming hospitality. That's the reason he introduced meal after the service. Rich and the poor, everybody sits and they eat and they enjoy the fellowship, hospitality in the church. That's the reason the church grew 30-fold, 60-fold, 100-fold. But where is the hospitality today? After the church, today there is a kind of snacks time. Eating snacks and getting away. Of course, people have money to pay. But where is the time at the table, sitting and talking and inviting God into the church? Today, there is no God in many of the churches. Here, that's the great mission strategy we learned from Abraham. He practiced the hospitality strategy. Of course, he never knew what a strategy. He knows only God and that deep, intimate relationship. As he invited the guest and gave the hospitality, God revealed what he's going to do. Now, that's what Bible says. Can we hide to Abraham? No, because he served us. And then God revealed. He invited God's blessing in the home in the form of a child, and also he was able to engage in the mission of God to rescue Lot through prayer. That's what Abraham wrestled with God in prayer. And Lot is saved by force of arms there. Here, Lot is saved by divine intervention. God himself saved Lot through the prayer, the ministry of prayer. Genesis 18:16. Then the man rose up from there and looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham was walking with them to send them off. The Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Since Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and in him all the nations of the earth will be blessed. And God had a great plan him. He didn't hide anything. And then the man turned away from there and went towards Sodom while Abraham was still standing before the Lord. You see here, lessons on intercessional prayer. Intercessory prayer. An amazing mission strategy here. Prayer changes things. The Lord is concerned about people. Hospitality and prayer are the two powerful weapons in our ministry. I have experienced in my life. Even yesterday, we inaugurated our ashram. It all came into existence only through the prayer, fasting prayers. And today I'm able to minister to people because the Lord is concerned about people. We need to engage in the ministry of prayer. And sometimes when I don't have any work, I just simply sit under a tree and pray for the world, pray for places, pray for the villages, pray for people. And prayer changes things. Faithful people are instrumental in bringing blessings to those with whom they live. Abraham came near and said, will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Of course, Abraham wrestled with God. And he said 50 righteous. And then again, he said 30, 40. And finally, he came to the 10. So the Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous with the city, then I will spare the whole place on the account. And then Abraham slowly keep on. He reduced his number. And then finally, he was able to save. He was able to save his nephew. Now, in Genesis 18, two angels and the Lord met Abraham as he sits in the door of his tent. Here in 19, or chapter 19, two angels met Lot as he sits at the gate of the city Sodom. The narrative begins in the heart of the heat of the afternoon. Here, the narrative takes up with the events that same evening. Abraham ran to meet them and bowed down before them. Here, Lot rises to meet them and then bows down before them. Of course, whether it's a good boy or a bad boy, Lot also had this rich concept of hospitality. At the square, he was there inviting the guest. He invited the guest to his house. That's the reason, we see a great miracle happen here. Abraham invites them to eat and rest from their travels. Here, Lot invites them to eat and spend the night in his house. Look at the ministry of hospitality. Spend the night in the house, staying inside the house. And today, we have a lot of money and the luxury. When guest comes, we say, hey, I booked a hotel there. You will have a lot of privacy. Hotel is different. So how we all grew up in the Asian context. Small house. But everybody lives there. That's the reason spirituality takes place. Today, when God's servant comes, the churches and invitees, they book a hotel. The other day, my pastor called me and said, the guest is coming to as a speaker. I was looking around some good hotel, nearby my house, there is a sophisticated 5-star hotel came. He asked me to inquire there. In my mind, I was thinking, what nonsense he is doing. Whether it's difficult or problematic, it is better to keep the God servant inside the house, because we bring blessing into the house. It's a big house. Though we have a big houses, we want to keep guests in the hotel because we think they will be there safe. But no, we need to invite. Of course, we will have a lot of spiritual talk at the table, and children will watch how the God servant behaves in the house. A lot of things happen. 101. It is always a blessing to serve people. We should never do that. We should, we particularly Asians, we are a community of, family, community of living together. They immediately accept Abraham's invitation there in 18. Here in 19, we see they initially refuse the Lord's invitation, but as he insists, they reluctantly accept. That's the reason I still remember as a small boy, when the guests come home, even they say, no, we want to go. We used to force them, no, please, at least one day you stay, forcefully, because we want guests at home. We need to come back to those basics: hospitality, serving, inviting people, asking them to, I'm so grateful to USI ministry. I still remember as a staff worker, as I travel around, people invite me to preach. Only single bedroom sometime. Wife and husband take a mat and sleep on the floor, and they give that bedroom to sleep. Sometimes I feel so guilty, and I ask, no, you should take no. It is a blessing for us. Hundreds of houses I have seen like that. That's the reason they are blessed. The children are blessed, and God brings blessing. I don't say that you should give away your comfort, but whatever the little arrangements we can make, having a God servant in the home is always a great blessing. But today we have this hotel concept. Abraham intercedes for Lot. Here, Lot intercedes on behalf of the angels. And now Abraham is told of the impending judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah in 18. Here in 19, Lot is told of the impending destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. There, Abraham's wife expresses disbelief at the promise of God concerning the birth of his son. Here, Lot's wife expresses disbelief at God's warning not to look back at the doomed city of Sodom. I don't generalize, but woman is weak by nature. It is a man's responsibility to train and to take the leadership and to take the wife along with him. But Lot failed here. With all the difficulties, Abraham succeeded taking Sarah with her. But Lot failed. There are so many Lots here in our clergy. Maharaja outside, but inside, Maharani goes away. Lot's wife expresses disbelief at God's warning not to look back at the doomed city of Sodom. We need to blame Lot also because he didn't prepare her in all aspects of spirituality and family life. Here in 18, culminates in the birth of a son. Here in 19, culminates in the death of a city. Abraham believed the promise of God, but here Lot became fearful due to his unbelief. God said, you run. He said, no, we can't run. Can we stay here in the small village? That's the reason, not village. Can we run here to the small village? And he was afraid of the villages. He went and lived in a cave. That's the reason a terrific sinful behavior came out of him. And eventually it is shameful to talk about the sin. God gave Abraham a son through his wife Sarah. Here Lot had 2 sons born through incest with his own daughter. Such a shame on him. Such a horrible sin. Abraham's offsprings were blessed here. Here Lot's offsprings were cursed because what he did is unforgivable, terrific sin. Terrific sin. You see here a righteous man. You see here a sinful man. As we compare, we learn lessons. Pictures one in a covenant relationship with God in 18, here in 19. Pictures one approaching life independently of God. 2 Peter 2:8 says, tell us that Lot, while living among them, felt his righteous soul tormented day after day with their lawless deeds. Now the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, as Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. Then Lot saw them. He rose to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. Of course, we have discussed the comparison between the two chapters and what all the incidents were happened, and then how God had to bring punishment on Lot and his family. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah, brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities, and what grew on the ground, everything was burned completely. It literally happened. There are many evidences for this. Lot brought these two cursed generations, Moab and Ammon. Moab and Ammon, cursed generations. They were located here, Moab and Ammon. Now Abraham journeyed from there toward a land of the Negev and settled between Kadesh and Shur. Then he sojourned to Gerar, Genesis 21. Abimelech, Sarai, and Abraham. She is my sister. Even there, you see, Abraham was afraid and he said, she is my sister. The king of Gerar, and we understand there, takes Sarai, the king of Gerar, and hears dawn. And that's what happened there. And Abraham, if you look at the chart, Abraham married Sarai. It was God's intention to bring a great generation, nations through Sarai, through his own flesh and blood. But he fell in sin by the forceful advice of his own wife Sarah, and he accepted Hagar and brought these nations, Ishmael, a few nations with Ishmael. Even today, there is a great fight between these two, Abimelech and Abraham. You see, God with us, swear an oath of friendship. Here, Abraham, your people stole my well. Beersheba, this is the Beersheba. There happened all these incidents. Let me see. Let me skip all this. Even today, these monuments give the witness and the historical. And there is a comparison between Isaac and Jesus to be offered as a sacrifice to God. God asked him to offer. He was about to be offered. But here, offered as a sacrifice for the sins of the whole world. Not about, but he was offered. Here, taken to Mount Moriah, outside the ancient city of Jerusalem. Jesus, taken to Golgotha, outside the city of Jerusalem. And Isaac carried the wood for the sacrifice up the mountain. Jesus carried his own cross for his crucifixion up the mountain. Isaac bound and laid at the altar. Jesus nailed to the cross. And now, Isaac, 3 days for Abraham and Isaac to travel to Moriah, the place of death. 3 days after his crucifixion, Jesus rose from the dead. There is no death for the Lord Jesus. I'm not saying Isaac is equal to Jesus. No, there is a kind of comparison here. Typology, they call it in a theological context. They call it the typology. Anyway, I want to skip all that. So God is the one who provides, because Jehovah Jireh, he provides. That's what we learn from Hebrews here. Genesis 22, 13 to 14. Before I conclude, let me read. Then Abraham raised his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and offered him up for a place of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place, the Lord will provide, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it will be provided. Yirah, from the root word Ra, means to see. Provide means to see. The Lord will provide, because he is seeing our need. He sees our need and he provides, whatever it may be, whether it is a psychological need, spiritual need, financial need, or whatever the need that is. The Lord will see the need and he will provide. May God bless all of us today and have a blessed day.